that we use for flora and fauna survey work. These are big torches that we use for spotlighting animals. So we go out looking for generally possums and night birds. So when you're using these torches and things, you try and put the torch close to above your head so that you're looking along the same line as the beam of the torch, and you'll see eye shine coming back at you. And depending on the colour of the eyes of the animals and the size and how they're moving, you can get a better idea of what that animal is just by the eye, and then you try and get a closer look at it and see the whole thing. So yeah, that's one thing we do, spotlighting. We also do call playback, which is where we use a megaphone like this, and we have the calls of different animals in here, generally night birds as well, and possums, gliders. And I'll just slow down a bit. All of those animals have their own call, so if you play that call to them, they will often come back and call at you as well. Or they'll be drawn to the call that you've been playing because you'll be in their territory and they'll think that you're an animal of the same species, which is moving into their area. So that's a really easy way for us to find owls and gliding possums and other animals of the night and the day. We have all sorts of identification books that you need. It's really, really hard to identify every plant, animal, insect that you come across in the bush, and there are people who specialise just in birds, just in microbats, just in mammals and macropods, or just in tadpoles and frogs. So it becomes really, really tricky when you're trying to identify a frog from a tadpole. So I can't claim to be, across everything like this. I'm a generalist in my understanding of it all, but as time goes on, my knowledge grows and grows. And I use people who are specialists in their field. So I've got a lady who works for me who's just finished a PhD on microbats. So if you want to learn about microbats, they're fantastic little creatures that go around eating insects at night. And we pick them up, we know that they're a bat by use of this thing, which is an anabat bat detector. It records bat sound, ultrasonic sound. So if you turn it on and you hear a bat will be chirping away. Can you hear that? So it'll pick up that noise and record it, and then we look at the signature of that sound on a computer and analyse it and compare it to known signals of other bats, and we can, within reason, go, yeah, that's it. But there are some that are a bit difficult and quirky. We also go looking for animal residue. So here we've got, technically known as a scat, not to be confused with the jazz, but we actually generally look for scat of foxes. There's a fox scat in here, so you get to know, believe it or not, your scat shapes and sizes, and you can identify, you'll know that there's an animal on site, which is really important if you've got an endangered animal, that you can go, oh, okay, we've got that here because we've got a scat. It's a positive identification of it. But the foxes are repositories of animals. They eat them. So if you find a fox scat, it will generally have hair in it, and you can actually identify the hair. So if you've got voucher samples of each of the hair types, you can get them under a microscope and go, oh. So in one fox scat, you might have 3 or 4 animals that come up in your survey. There's also some bones in here. There's a little jawbone and some animal bones. This was all found within about 3 metres of itself. Little patches scat, and all of these bones and things were right there. So there's an animal that was bringing everything back there and eating it. The other thing that we do is we use recorders. So we'll go out with a recorder and actually record bird noises, because birds have lots of noises. They're not just one call. They might have a distress call or a breeding call. So in season they might have different calls, and it's really hard to get them all into your head. And it's really hard to twitch, which is where you make the sound of the bird and you will attract that bird species to you as well. So yeah, getting the bird calls on a recorder is really good, because you can use that to work out what birds you've got on site. Lyrebirds in particular are good value because they're mimicking all the other birds. So with a lyrebird you can pick up 15 or 20 different bird species from just recording the lyrebird once. We use these for working out where we catch or where we sight animals, but also floristic stuff. So we'll have a GPS in here that locates the edge of the extent of an endangered, an ecological community. So plants and animals, when they're joined together, are called an ecological community. And they're described by the soil type, and then the plants, and then the animals that live within that. And those communities are actually listed and described by the Scientific Committee of the National Parks and Wildlife Service, and some of them, if they're poorly represented, there's not much of it left in New South Wales, and they become protected under the Threatened Species Conservation Act. Yet traps, they're called. So they're made so that they actually flap down, and you can carry 20 or 30 of these in a little box. You flick them up and there's a little pressure pad inside. So you put some bait in there and little animals go crawling in, tread on the plate, and then the thing lifts up like that. So the end piece lifts and the animal gets trapped inside. So then you come and have a look inside when you pick it up the next day and see what animal's in there. So far we've only found some Rattus fuscipes, but I'm expecting to also find Antechinus and white-footed dunnart. Maybe here, it was here in the past, so it'd be lovely to find one of those as well. Yeah, so that's how we find those, and we can actually put them up in trees as well and get little sugar gliders and feather-tailed gliders and things like that in them also. So that's sort of how we do it. We've also had a fish guy who works for me, so he's been out there trapping fish and gudgeons and beautiful little fish in the creek, and little prawn species as well. So it's quite an interesting area because we're at the end of the tidal zone here, so it's a mix of fresh and estuarine sort of waters. So there's some interesting things. This trap here is a cage trap. That's usually used for larger animals. We catch bigger possums in that. I'll show you a photo later on of a monitor lizard that I got in there. I baited it with a bit of chicken, and it went in there after it and couldn't get out again. Yeah, so we had to obviously let it out. It was only in there for a few hours. But yeah, we catch possums and things in there as well. And so we can identify them. This is called a hair tube, and what it is basically a piece of paper with sticky tape or stickiness on it here, and in this little silver thing we put a bait, usually rolled oats and some sugar, honey and maybe some truffle oil, and that attracts animals to it, and we put that on the ground and you pin it to the ground, so it's like that, and a little animal sticks its head in there trying to get the bait, and it can't eat the bait, but it leaves hair behind on the sticky tape so that you can get the hair, and so we analyse that hair.